Shailendra, thank you so much for joining today at TechSparks. And today, we are joined by a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders, young leaders. We talk about this entrepreneurial mindset and the tangible and the intangible value that it brings to the table. I want to ask you from your lens as a leader today, as a global leader, what does it mean to bring this mindset to the work, to what we are doing?
Hey, first of all, thanks Shraddha for having me on this interaction. And yeah, it's a great question. What really defines entrepreneurial mindset? And you did touch upon it as being growth oriented, but in my own experience, I think it's a little deeper and broader than that. Because growth may not touch every function, but when we look at entrepreneurial mindset, it's not just about sales or the revenue functions. So fundamentally, I think it's about being a problem solver and trying to make things better. And there are people of that mindset where they'll go hunting for problems, they'll take that risk, they'll try and find new solutions. They hate the status quo, and that kind of skill where people are not very happy with the status quo, fundamentally they come from making things better. That skill of is obviously of immense value to any company. Obviously it helps in growth, but it does help in a lot of other areas where things are not moving at the right pace, or the processes which may not be right. But if someone comes with a problem solving mindset, I think that is what defines entrepreneurship for me.
The other question I want to ask you is that today all the businesses, and this is a year when Zomato has gone for a very historic IPO, everyone is scaling, growing, and everyone is thinking about scaling and growing. I want to ask you, Shailendra, that what do you think one has to do, or what are some of the tenets one has to think when it comes to growing your business in a very sustainable way, innovation in a very sustainable way?
Yeah, that is a $1 million question, right? Things look very rosy when there's a small set of founders, a small team, and obviously there's hyper growth that everyone is able to achieve on a small base. But when you talk about the point that you made on sustainable kind of growth, how do you make it a predictable pattern? Because that is what shareholders and investors finally need, right? It's not about the initial 100 to 200% kind of growth, but how do you go predictably every quarter? And I think it's not an easy thing, that how do you, because there are different kinds of people. There are people who can do the operational scaling excellence part better, and there are people who can do the innovation part better. But if you want both, which is the predictability of execution, operational excellence, and also innovation to sustain, I think you have to get into the fundamental culture of the company. That do you have the right DNA in the company where both can happen at the same time. And if the same person can't do both, obviously you'll need the complementarity of the team to work together. You will have different skill sets coming through. But how do you create a culture where you are backing new ideas, at the same time you are backing people who are driving the status quo in a more predictable fashion? And you can't back everyone, right? Finally, when you are accountable to shareholders and investors, it's not about that trying out every exciting new idea. You need to have some method to the madness, otherwise you'll end up. So having a process around innovation, and that is what I've seen companies do, not necessarily in the current startup ecosystem itself, but companies who are small and who become large over time. They try and create a process around innovation where it's called the funnel, that you have maybe 100 exciting ideas, but out of 100 have a gate process, out of 100 which are showing some promise, get it down to 50, and then maybe 10 take it to market to test out, and finally really put money behind the one big idea which is showing promise after some test market. So having that constant funnel alive, because you have to be prepared for drop-offs. Innovation success rate is less than 10% globally across industries, right? But having that 100 to start off with is important, which is where the culture, the DNA part comes in, that encourage new ideas, encourage people to take risks, but then also celebrate failure, because from 90, 100 ideas getting to one success means that people should have the appetite to also have failure and rejection along the way. And I've seen some companies do that very well, that even if there's a failure, there are enough learnings from that, and that learning itself is success for the future.
Lenovo is known for applying and I want to read it correctly, the concept of FUPAN. Have I pronounced it? FUPAN or FUPAN?
Yeah, the difficult one, FUPAN is what we call it, almost there.
Yeah, FUPAN, which means replaying the chessboard as an integral part of your culture. I want to understand from you, how is Fupan applied for business growth? How do you look at this?
Yeah, so it's a fairly simplistic thing to start off with, right? Chess players may be familiar with that. That after every game you analyze the chessboard again, which is what in Chinese it is called Fupan, which is replaying the chessboard. So simplistically, it means that after every event or every project or every milestone, you tend to look at the thing objectively, and objectivity is important. You have to take emotion out, and then you have to get into peeling the onion in terms of figuring out why did we succeed or why did we fail on that particular event or milestone. And doing it at every stage of the journey is important, not necessarily at the end of the year or end of the completion of the project. So sounds simplistic, but it requires a lot of discipline, especially when you have to move beyond the surface level and getting into the real root cause analysis. And when you do the root cause analysis, you keep asking why till the time you can't ask why once more. You get to the real root cause. That is what creates predictable success, because then you have a repeatable formula that I've got to the root cause, I know what it is about, and that is what I can take to scale. Now, Fupan has immense value for us as an organization. We have grown many-fold over the last 2 decades because it's a culture, it's a thing inculcated in every employee who joins in. So it helps you weed out the noise and comes to the real thing that you need to fix. Either a successful model that you can scale or something that you clearly need to shut down. And both points are important. One is the discipline of peeling the onion, keep asking why. And the second part is objectivity, because all of us are employees, and we tend to get emotional if we have failure associated, or we tend to get overjoyed and tend to give a lot of credit to ourselves when something succeeds. But really getting to the core of why something is working, not working, that is what Fupan is about. And talking about more entrepreneurship today, your context of startups, it's of great use, and people may be doing it intuitively because we do see people having that fail fast kind of approach, or trying out new things, or even pivoting. Pivot is a word that we've learned over the years with startups, but that is what Fupan is about, right? To keep figuring out what is really working, and if that means a fundamental shift in strategy, I think startups are quite okay doing that as well. So it's one of the deepest management principles that I have come across in my career. And yeah, sounds simplistic, but like I said, very, very disciplined effort is required to make it work.
As a leader, again, as an enterprise leader, it's extremely competitive, extremely high pressure environment that you live in. As leader, how do you continuously think like an entrepreneur? And how do you, what's the mind space in which you operate?
Yeah, so for anyone to think like an entrepreneur or leader, I think your job is to be deeply connected to the context and the environment. Because your role is the one that every role has an element of operation and a little bit of visioning. But when you are the leader or when you are the entrepreneur, that is the primary job, right? Are you ahead of the curve? Are you helping the organization stay ahead of the curve? So being deeply connected to the context and the environment, ability to pick up trends early on, and then also sticking your neck out and taking those few bets where you are committing organizational resources. I think that is what is the mental model that I tend to apply. That am I able to read trends a little better than competition? Am I able to then back teams around those trends and build solutions around the early trends we see in the market? Otherwise, we'll always be playing catch up versus competition, right? No idea is unique. It's only about who gets there first and executes better.
This question. Before that, let me read this quote by this best-selling author, Hal Elrod. He says, your level of success will rarely exceed your level of personal development, because success is something you attract by the person you become. While there is a huge focus on organizational growth, the processes, and how we are evolving, I want to understand from you, as an organization, as a leader, how do you look at the personal growth? Because at the end of the day, it's the people who are working, who are making things happen.
Again, great question, and maybe I'll answer it at a broader level, looking back at the last maybe 2 decades of my career. See, the earlier structures were a lot more hierarchical, right? You could earn a position just by the virtue of being there, and there's a hierarchical structure that supports your position. But over time, and a lot has happened because of the internet coming in and things flattening out, access to markets becoming less I would say, but from multi-layered, we are getting into more direct conversations with customers. Now that is creating this thing about a very flat organization. And a very flat organization means then the leader is also part of the team. He is not occupying a position for the heck of it. And when you are part of the operating team, while you are expected to, I would say, manage and lead the team, your seat on the table is also because there is some value. People will cherish and value your contribution that you are bringing to that conversation. It can't be run with a control and review mindset anymore. And it's not just now. I think it's built up over the last decade or so, where it's about and to my mind, it's becoming more like sports teams, right? There will be a captain, but he's a not a non-playing captain. He has to have his sleeves rolled up. He has to have enough skills.
Yeah.
And constantly there will be pressure of the team that you are hiring being better than you in a lot of places or a lot more skilled than you. So you may not be an expert in everything because as an entrepreneur or as a leader, you get into general management. But having at least enough knowledge and reskilling constantly to earn your seat at the table, that would be one. And the second is then how do you back people? Because you'll never be a subject matter expert in all the things that your organization is likely to do. But then are you able to inculcate the right team dynamics and ensure that teams feel that they're growing with you? That I think would be and you also grow. When the team grows, you also grow as a person and as a leader, right? So these are the two skill sets I would say that constant upskilling is required. You can't shy away from that. Like even in my marketing days, right? I came from a traditional advertising FMCG kind of background, and suddenly when you enter the digital world, none of those formulas work. So
Yeah.
one had to earn the seat at the table again in terms of learning all the new digital technologies. And similarly, in business, we are going through a transformation. There are a lot of new areas that we're exploring. So learning is constant. Content is also easily available now, so skilling is not that difficult. And the second is then backing the team for growth.
Yeah. Shailendra, this I was just having conversation just before this with Baiju, and he said something. What you're saying is that he said that while you are teaching, you are constantly learning. So it's not that you're imparting learning. So as a leader, when you're teaching or you're doing something, you yourself are constantly learning, and that's what you're saying. That you have to constantly reinvent, upskill, and bring yourself to the table, right? Bring those things to the table.
Yeah, so I'll share an anecdote at this stage. So there's a friend of mine who works he's a CEO of a startup in a cloud security domain, right?
Yeah.
And while technically he's qualified for the last whatever 15, 20 years, he's been doing more revenue roles. Now his team is an expert team of hackers and coders. Now, how does he earn a seat at the table if he's not at least demonstrating that he knows what that game is about? It's not just about sales and revenue, but to gain their respect, very young bunch of guys, very good at world class in coding. You have to show that you can code to those guys to earn their respect. So it is challenging, but yeah, the Baiju's example is also brilliant that you are teaching while learning.
Lenovo had its fastest growing Q4 in March 2021, and you've surpassed all revenues with over $60 billion in revenue. And this has happened on the back of pandemic and the toughest time humanity has seen. What are some of the learnings that we all can pick up and everyone watching today can pick up when it comes to resilience, when it comes to grit, when it comes to walking the talk in the toughest of times?
Yep, we've had good results last year, but maybe I'll answer that in the context of the kind of company we are. So we are very large, but we still retain the soul and agility of a startup, I would say. And I have seen this company over the last decade, the ability to reinvent, ability to read what is likely to happen in the future and pivot the organization, whether then it happens through organic route or inorganic route. So right now we are going through a third level of transformation in the last decade or so. The first was geographic, that you move from your home country to becoming global. That happened in the early 2006-7 kind of period. And then it was about becoming number one in your core business across geographies. Then it was about, okay, we are great in one kind of computing device. Can we become great at other kind of computing devices? So that is where we launched the phone business. We acquired Motorola. Then we said, okay, that is the front end. In the connected world, you also need infrastructure solutions. And that is, we acquired some part of IBM on the x86 server business and created an infrastructure solution group. So again, this 2 or 3 phases of evolution, whether it is organic, inorganic, it comes from that thing about reading the future, which I spoke about earlier. And I must compliment our founders and global leadership team for being constantly at it. Because in tech life cycles, we've seen very iconic brands also vanish at the drop of a hat. The
Yeah.
fact that we've been around for the last 3 decades and successfully growing means that we are reasonably alive to trends. And right now, we are on this transformation of okay, end to end, we have endpoint devices to infrastructure solutions. So everything in hardware that you want is under one umbrella. But the customers are needing a lot more than that, right? It's about solutioning. How do you understand my business and my pain point a lot better as IT provider? And can you give me an end-to-end solution, which is where our service and solution-led growth is also gaining a lot of traction, which is a lot more about customer intimacy and being a partner in their growth rather than only having a vendor contract on hardware.
Yeah.
So our growth fundamentally is this, which is still retaining the soul of a startup, being alive to trends, and then quickly putting together world-class solutions at scale. I think that is what we are very, very good at.
Okay, and my last question to you, and this I can only ask you because you come from the corporate world, but you also come from a very fast-paced corporate, the tech world that we are all living in today. Is that how do you, at scale, and this is at scale, how do you retain the entrepreneurial mindset, the agility, the startup-y culture, and also bring that corporate expertise? Because Lenovo has done that phenomenally, and that's what your results show, that's what your market leadership shows. How does that both the things coexist? How do you make that happen? Grow, fail fast mindset, and being very systematic and process driven.
Yeah, so and to be completely honest, it's not that we've a perfect formula. We've tried our best to retain, and most organizations try and do this two things, right? That if you have a successful core, you have people running the core, and then you throw more bodies at the new. So it's always an innovation team and a whatever operations team, which are kind of segregated. But we spoke about this in the earlier part of the discussion.
Yeah.
How do you bring both together and have enough cross fertilization is really the success formula. So having only people do the old, drive the core versus only doing the new never necessarily works out. So having fundamentally then a culture and a DNA which allows for reskilling, allows for knowledge sharing, allows for risk taking. And risk reward, I think, is a key part of it because if people are comfortable in the old, they'll never try anything new. And similarly, if people try something new and they fail and you end up penalizing them, it also doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, a lot of this is retained because of the DNA and the culture of the organization where people are allowed to take risks. We are not hierarchical. It is a lot more, I would say, empowering in that sense, where people can come in and make a difference.
We are at TechSparks. We are talking about what's next, and we're living in a world which is changing so fast. What is it that keeps you very, very excited about India, about where we are?
Yeah, so obviously this thing about technology being very, very relevant for everyone is not a new story, right? Because the internet happened maybe a long time back in the early 90s. What I'm really excited about is now technology being used for greater good.
Yeah.
It's not just about a consumption device or you being on social media, but how can technology really make and I do feel that the world has not seen enough of that right now. Where people are still grappling with environment issues, people are still grappling with many geopolitical issues, with health issues. But apart from getting the world connected, which brings its own joy when the world becomes seamless as an experience, but how do you fundamentally use technology for the greater good? And we've started making some steps as a company there. But if you ask for my personal excitement, it would be a lot more in that domain. How do you fundamentally change lives with the education solutions? How do you fundamentally improve society with healthcare? How do you send the next mission to Mars? And maybe call that as all that also has technology at the heart of it, right?
Thank you, Shailendra. This was very insightful, very meaningful, and very thought through responses. I think we all have a lot to pick from what you said, and Fupan is something that I'm taking away with me. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Meet the critical unknowns, the unseen IT experts shaping the future of healthcare with our device to data center solutions.